the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS podcast listeners. This episode is all about IELTS writing consistency. And basically, consistency is a very useful element that you should be aware of when you're writing, especially if you're going for anything above band 7. And consistency is obviously going to help you with your coherence score. So this podcast is all about consistency. We're going to look at about 4 or 5 different variations. I'd recommend you grab a pen and write down the examples I give you, and then try playing with the examples, bend it, put some new vocabulary in there, maybe a different structure but use the same principles, and this will help you absorb the material, help you learn the material and use the material as well. And like I said before, this is for the upper echelons of the IELTS band grading structure. It's for the more intermediate students. However, even if you're writing at a band 5 or a band 6, it's still worth paying attention to, because it's not the most difficult thing to introduce, but it's one of those things that you'll never realize you're doing unless you're aware of it. So that's why it's kind of tricky. Now, let's have a look at the first example of consistency. What I want to talk about here is verb tenses and mood. This one might be a little bit tricky at first, but it's much clearer with the examples. So, first of all, what I mean by consistency with your tenses and your mood is that sometimes inexperienced writers or unaware writers might create unnecessary shifts in the tense, and this can be confusing and also probably increase reader strain, which in this example would be the examiner. And we don't want to cause any strain at all for this examiner. Okay, we want to get on well with it. So let's go. Now here's an unclear example. Numerous scientists have based their argument on evidence yet to be discovered. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense. There's no consistency there. Numerous scientists have based their argument on evidence yet to be discovered. Write that down. Can you see? It's inconsistent. It creates a strain, a problem there. So the clearer version would be: numerous scientists have based their argument on historical evidence, full stop. It just all corresponds. It's parallel. It's basically consistent. That's what it is. Not parallel, sorry, it's consistent. And we can also say numerous scientists have based their argument on historical evidence discovered in the last decade. So I'll just quickly mention again the first one. Numerous scientists have based their argument on evidence yet to be discovered. So it's inconsistent, because how can a scientist base their argument? How can it build their argument around something that doesn't even exist, as in it has yet to be discovered? So that's why it's inconsistent. Whereas the other one, numerous scientists have based their argument on historical evidence. And just by saying historical evidence, we're clearly indicating that the evidence came from the past. We could even just say on evidence, because it's still, it's just not as clear. If they say it's based on evidence, that's fine. For historical evidence, it's more specific, and it's pretty certain that it's from the past. So that's how we would improve that sentence and make it more consistent. Now I'm going to give you an example of mood swing. So if it's an inconsistent mood swing, then what it will be is that basically we're changing the tone mid-sentence. The best way to explain this is with an example. Consequently, it is recommended a child stay away from large animals, fire, and should also avoid heavy transport infrastructure. Hopefully you wrote that down. I'll say it again. Consequently, it is recommended a child stay away from large animals, fire, and should also avoid heavy transport infrastructure. What's wrong with that sentence? Pause the podcast, have a think. And I can tell you now, the problem here is in the last part of the sentence. He says, and should also do this. So, at first, you're saying it's recommended a child do this and this and this, and they should also do this. Now, I mean, recommended and should are kind of similar, but it's just unnecessary to say should in there. It's inconsistent. So the correct way would be, consequently, it is recommended a child stay away from large animals, fire, and heavy transport infrastructure. That's consistent all the way through. It's recommended that they do all of this, and now there's no ambiguity whether a child should stay away from heavy transport infrastructure, because it's all included in the same thought. It's not, they should also do this. Now, what is the child supposed to be doing? What is the recommendation? Is it this or something that you think they should be doing? But if we just keep it all together and delete the should, then the whole sentence becomes more consistent, and that's the goal. So that would be an example of mood swings, or a shift in the mood. The next one I wanted to talk about was the shift between active and passive voice, the shift in subject. This one's quite easy to understand, I think. So, here's one version. The IMF believes Haiti is corrupt. Numerous politicians were prosecuted. What's the story here? What's the problem? I'll give you another clue. It's between active and passive voice. Shift in subject. The IMF believes Haiti is corrupt. Numerous politicians were prosecuted. Well, the problem is we've shifted between the active and the passive voice mid-sentence, and now I don't really know who actually prosecuted these politicians. This is a strain and it's inconsistent. How could we correct that sentence? Pause, have a think, write it down, and really, I'd strongly recommend doing this. It's going to be beneficial for you. If you're actively doing this, then you're more likely to remember it, more likely to use it. So let's see the correct version. The IMF believes Haiti is corrupt. In fact, it prosecuted numerous politicians. Now I know exactly what's going on. There's no strain there. There's no need for that passive voice. I made it all active, and I know that I know what the IMF believes, and who prosecuted the numerous politicians, and that's important. Now, the next way we can improve our consistency is by introducing parallelism. Okay, and this basically means putting the sentences in a coordinated form, or the elements of the sentence in a coordinated form. And this is quite easy to introduce into your writing, and it does have a quick and positive effect, especially regarding the style. And style is important for academic writing. The reason, and this is exactly the reason why I put this chapter, there's a whole chapter about this in the sentence guide, sentenceguide.com, because it's a fast way to improve your writing, and it makes it sound much, much more readable and enjoyable. This is exactly what we want for the IELTS. Alright, so let's go. Parallelism. Here's the first version. You can tell me if it's right or wrong. The chart shows production increasing rapidly in 1991, but falling in 1992. That's grammatically fine, by the way. But if we wanted to introduce parallelism, how could we do it for this sentence? Well, we would introduce a adverb. Okay? So here's the incorrect version. Grammatically correct, but inconsistent would be a more accurate way. The chart shows production increasing rapidly in 1991 but falling in 1992. Okay, but unparalleled, inconsistent. Here's the correct one. The chart shows production increasing rapidly in 1991 but falling steadily in 1992. So because we've used an adverb in the first clause, let's use an adverb in the second clause. Okay? And this just makes it flow a lot easier. It makes it easier to read. Not slightly easier to read, but it's just got a better style. It's equally balanced now. So, and that's such a simple concept to introduce into your writing, and there's no reason why you can't introduce it. Now then, here's the next example of consistency, or how to introduce more consistency into your writing. And this is similar to the one we were talking about before, and this is with the shift in the subject. We must make sure that the subject is consistent throughout the sentence, or at least it should be clearly indicated who is doing what to whom, and if the subject changes, then it should be crystal clear. Now, let's have a look at the next sentence. Politicians must not think the electorate share the same religion. Is that good or bad? Once again, politicians must not think the electorate share the same religion. Good or bad? Well, it's bad because we don't know who should share the same religion with who. Yeah? Politicians must not think the electorate share the same religion as themselves, as the politicians, or politicians must not think the electorate share the same religion as each other, as in the electorate sharing the same religion, as in all of the electorate, that's basically the citizens who vote, all the citizens being Christian, all the citizens being Muslim, all of them having the same religion as each other. So in the first one, it's just not clear who we are referring to as having the same religion. The same religion as the politician, the same religion as each other, all the citizens being Christian, all the citizens being Buddhist, whatever. So, yeah, when you finish your essay, the best way to actually get to grips with consistency is just look for some of those mistakes. Look for them and try identify and try correct them as well. Get some feedback from your friends, get some feedback from the essay correction sites, and yeah, this is just one small element that's going to push your writing and help you improve, not considerably, but it will make the examiner's job easier. And this goes back, not back because I haven't done it yet, but I'll be doing a podcast soon about identifiers, and these are small clues that the examiner gets as to how they will determine the writing, how they will determine your score. I'm not going to go into it in more detail now. And by the way, for those who, the sharper ones are the ones really paying attention, you may have guessed that in spoken English there is inconsistency, as in I just said it actually, and it's okay in spoken English, but I said the examiner needs to know what's going on in your essay because they are the ones correcting it. Okay, it's just a random example, but here I started off with the examiner, singular, and because English doesn't have a single pronoun which doesn't designate the gender, as in it always has to be he or she in the singular, then I have to use the plural, which is neutral. And that's okay for spoken English, but for written English it's not. So what we would do is say what the examiners have to do, and then just change it to the plural and keep using they. Okay? Right. Finished. All done. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, please leave me a review. I'd love that. That'd be fantastic. If you want some guidance, and if you want to test your essay for consistency and you want to get some feedback and you're determined to improve your writing, then check out IELTSWritingTask.net, IELTSWritingTask.net, or you can go to sentenceguide.com, or you can go to IELTSPodcast.com and send me an email. Okay? So have a fantastic day. Keep studying. Good luck in your exam. And remember, you will get there. Just take a consistent, determined approach. And trust me, you will improve. Okay, have a fantastic day. All the best.